everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on WJOPLP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9, and later will be available on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube station at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and today I'm delighted to tell you we're going to be talking about an exciting and impactful organization called Media Education Lab. We have Dr. Renee Hobbs here. She's the founder of Media Education Lab and a leading authority on digital and media literacy. She's currently professor of communication studies at the Harrington School of Communications and Media at the University of Rhode Island. So, Renee, first of all, welcome and thanks for taking time to visit the show.
Happy to be here, Mary.
Happy to have you. And we're also fortunate to have Kyra Brissette here. She's the Chief Operating Officer and Director of Development for Media Literacy Now. Kyra, welcome, and thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Thank you for inviting me, Mary.
Happy to have you both. And I'm excited to be talking to you about such an important topic. I wanted to start by saying how I myself first learned about your organization. A few weeks ago, I did a show on the topic of genocide education in Massachusetts with a former high school history teacher and curricular consultant on genocide education in Massachusetts. Susan Harvey was here. And in preparing for that interview, she sent me a document about the 2021 Massachusetts state law that mandates the teaching of genocide education for middle school and high school students. And in that, they were talking about possible curricular content for 8th graders, and they mentioned 5 key questions of media literacy from Media Education Lab. And I immediately wanted to know more, because in an age of rampant disinformation and in an age when people, I think especially young people, get their news from TikTok and other forms of social media, my sister always says it's as if people are getting their news from a bulletin board. And I think that's a pretty good description of it. So it seemed I was eager to be able to talk to you about the work that you're doing. So Renee, maybe we could start with you. I'd love to hear the origin story of Media Education Lab. When, how, where did it get started? And what prompted you to want to begin your organization?
Well, thank you so much for asking about origin stories. That's so beautiful because, you know, I started my career in Massachusetts. I was an assistant professor at Babson College in Wellesley.
Yes.
And I first got interested in media literacy education when it was very strange. My students at Babson were finance and accounting majors, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't know anything about the First Amendment. They didn't really know how cable television worked or how it was regulated. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, well, you know, what are the life skills? What are the practical skills my students need to navigate living in at that time, Mary, it was a 500-channel universe.
Wow.
Ooh, remember?
Yeah.
So many channels. So my media literacy outreach project started way back in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. And in the 1990s, I offered a professional development program at Harvard Graduate School of Education. Mm-hmm. That was like in addition to my work at Babson College. Mm-hmm. And that focus on teacher education in media literacy was really propelled by a lot of great Massachusetts teachers. I worked with teachers in Newton and Worcester and Waltham, out in Barnstable County on the Cape, years and years and years, and in Billerica. And then I got the great opportunity to move to take a new job at Temple University in Philadelphia. And there they said, we want you to build media literacy education programs as outreach to Philadelphia schools. And at that point, I formally became the Media Education Lab.
Okay.
So that's the origin story. It's got deep roots in Massachusetts.
Well, it certainly does. You covered the territory in Massachusetts, and then you expanded, which is really great. And I can hear that it built from kind of a formative experience at Babson, though, encountering certain gaps in education about media that are really only increasingly critical in the age we live in for us all to have as social media has expanded and grown, and as everybody is talking about what they call legacy media kind of fading in popularity and importance, and also, we must say, trust as well. So it's a really good origin story. and I'm really...
And today we're excited to be working at the national and the international levels as media literacy continues to change. We often say media literacy is a moving target because as media and technology change, media literacy education has to change too. So right now we're talking a lot about media and AI literacy. And I'm happy to report that in 2029, the OECD, which is the European agency responsible for the PISA test, the international test of 15-year-olds that's offered in 100 countries around the world, they'll be launching a new media and AI literacy test. So we'll have some very important data about what are the baseline skills that 15-year-olds around the world have for media and AI literacy. So this is a fast-moving target. You're right, because we get our news and information these days from a bulletin board.
Yeah, and it could be an AI-created bulletin board. And it's so important for us all to be knowledgeable so that we do need to be able to tell fact from fiction, and we do need to be able to recognize what propaganda is, and that links to what advertising is because they share strategies. And so it's so important, and I'm really glad you're working on it. And you've started to answer this already, but I was hoping that you could also talk about what are the most important services and programs that you're offering nationally and internationally. And then, Kyra, in a bit, we'll get to talk about what you're doing specifically in Massachusetts.
Wow. Okay, thanks a lot. So at the University of Rhode Island, we offer the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy. It's a 12-credit postgraduate certificate. It attracts people of all different backgrounds. It attracts people like yourself from mental health and the counseling fields. It attracts educators in the K-12 and the university context, librarians. Oh, we love librarians. They're so important to this work. And even media professionals and creative people with backgrounds in business and community development. So the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy is a big contribution that we make through the University of Rhode Island. Through the Media Education Lab, we're very excited. We offer an annual conference called the Media Ed Forum. It used to be called the Northeast Media Literacy Conference, and it ran for 18 years at different universities in New England. Now we host it, and on January 10th and 11th, we offer a fully online conference, 2-day conference. It's you can experience this conference from the comfort of your home because it's online, and it brings together media literacy experts from around the country and around the world. We're talking about things like what are the media literacy skills needed by baby boomers?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Because we're a unique demographic group, right?
Yeah, because there's some, being a baby boomer myself, there's some generational gaps in there in terms of knowledge of what the media is and how to navigate it. And of course, with that also, how to understand what its potentials are, what its vulnerabilities are, what its deceptions are. And so thank you for filling in my generation. We need it. We get made fun of for that.
And in a way, then that relates to another kind of ongoing program at the Media Education Lab. Every week, we offer free webinars on topics related to all kinds of different topics. We're doing a lot with AI in education now, but we're also talking about propaganda. We've got a series running on conspiracy theories, and we've got called Leading from the Library, which features how librarians from their positions are able to support and develop innovative programs and practices in media literacy education. So we have an academic librarian just coming up now in the next few days, talking to us about the work she's doing at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville,
great.
to bring media literacy into the academic library there. And then, of course, our bread and butter is, of course, the curriculum materials that we provide in terms of lesson plans, study guides, and videos. So those are all available at the Media Education Lab. We're really proud of our Courageous Conversations curriculum. It's 10 lessons for building media literacy and active listening around topics like social media influencers, free speech, hate speech, and censorship. It's a terrific curriculum, and it's rooted in the pedagogy of dialogue and discussion, which is, after all, one of the best ways to learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. That sounds very exciting, Renee. And I was particularly interested in finding out about the work that you do with teachers and students in schools. And a lot of that is curriculum development, as you've just been talking about, and it sounds wonderful and very much state of the art. But I'm curious to find out what kinds of questions do teachers come to you with, or librarians, or anyone really? What are the kinds of things that they're most concerned about learning how to address? Because I'm sure that they're hearing things from students, or if it's a librarian, readers all the time, that make them go, okay, that's problematic. What can we do about that? So what are the kinds of concerns that people bring to you that spark their interest in trying to have some materials they can work with?
Yeah. There's two questions that come up over and over again. One is, from some teachers, how can I protect my students from the most problematic aspects of media use? Now we're finding out about media addictions and mental health issues. We're finding out about disinformation and media that promotes hate, media that promotes stereotypes. So some teachers come to us with real concerns. They notice, they're paying attention to their learners, and they notice things that are problematic. Maybe they're also parents of children and see it in their own family. So some teachers want to know, how can we help minimize the potential risks and harms of using media? And then another group of educators come to us with a completely different question. We call it the empowerment question. They ask, how can I use media to better support my students as lifelong learners? How can I prepare them for living in a world where, this is going to be their major way of encountering information, entertainment, and persuasion? So those questions about protecting students and empowering students are the most common questions that we get.
Yeah. In Newburyport, there are lawn signs have appeared over the last number of weeks that say, "Phones down, heads up." And it's a parent-driven program to pay attention to what's the best way to deal with protecting young people from overexposure, or what shall we call it, misexposure. It's not just what you're exposed to, it's the amount of time that phones absorb, often, I think, to the detriment of actual human interaction. So that sounds really great, and I'm sure that parents and teachers are relieved to find out that they have resources with the Media Education Lab and programs like the ones you've been talking to turn to that can help them respond to those questions. Do you ever encounter difficulties with schools? Are they ever resistant to the idea of media literacy and education? And if so, how do you respond to them to overcome some of those resistances?
There's not, so most school leaders and teachers are super enthusiastic. There was a recent national survey, 85% of teachers and school leaders think media literacy is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, that's
But there is fear right? Because as our society has become more politically polarized, right? And not just in terms of what policies and political decision making is best for our country, but much more personal, what they call affective polarization, where we just don't like the other people, right? That more emotional kind of polarization. As that has risen, teachers recognize that when you do media literacy in schools, when you engage in asking critical questions about what you watch, see, and read, values topics are going to come up.
Yeah, of course.
What is what is a quality news source? Whose point of view should we respect and admire? These are values questions, and values enter into media literacy pedagogy all the time. And some teachers are afraid, school leaders are afraid, because they recognize the polarization in their own communities. They have received bans, book bans, and other sort of critical perspectives on issues like LGBTQ, diversity, appreciation, and so they're worried. They're worried their teachers might experience blowback if they bring in a New York Times a story and a parent says, well, why do you think that's a quality source, right? Or if they bring in a piece from Fox News, right? Or if they include a multiple points of view on controversial issues in history, like the causes of the Civil War, right? Or the nature of our conflict in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Renee. And it strikes me that that is the cultural fray that we're in right now and we're all witness to. But to me, it seems like we can't deal with it by either denying that it's happening or just avoiding it. I think, and what you do is you enter the fray. And if somebody says what makes the New York Times a critical source, then you have answers. Well, these are the questions we'll ask, and let's figure it out together. And to me, that's education.
Beautifully put.
That is, I know that one of the 4 C's that you talk about is critical thinking. And right there is critical thinking, which we would hope that effective polarization would diminish. We can all agree that it's good to be able to think critically, because otherwise we're ensuring ourselves to be well, I'll put this bluntly, kind of suckers for the most persuasive or the loudest voices or the scariest or the biggest bully in the room. And so I think that what you do is enter the fray, but in a way that's not creating more kind of conflict or friction, but saying, let's ask these questions. Let's have a constructive dialogue about that. And I actually think that that's what we're all craving. Because if we stay stuck, I often think, in a river there can be an eddy where it's this whirlpool where you just get stuck. I was in a water park once and I wound up in an eddy. And I got out, but it took a lot of kicking of my raft against the side to get out of that eddy. And it's not a happy place for anybody, because we often feel threatened. We make a lot of assumptions about the people who may be more like us in certain ways than we imagine. And that can lead us to fear and sometimes hate people, and that can lead to all sorts of, from anything from mischief to malice. And so I think that that's the strength of what you're doing, is to find ways to respond to the fears that people may express. So go ahead, Renee, you were going to say something.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to underline a point that's at the foundation of what you're embodying by, you being you, Mary. We're finding through our research that when adults engage in critical conversations about media, they have to activate, they have to answer questions like, who's the author and what's the purpose of this message and what point of view is offered and how do I know what I know kind of questions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What happens is people increase their intellectual curiosity.
Which is always a good thing.
Their defensiveness. That is a great combination.
Yeah.
we can be less fearful
Yeah.
of ideas that are different than our own, and we can be more genuinely curious, then
Yeah.
we're cultivating a habit of mind that's really conducive
Yeah.
to democratic participation.
Right.
And I feel
Yeah.
on your show, you're embodying that
Oh.
in terms of the outreach that you're offering and the insights that you're sharing with your community. That kind of intellectual curiosity is really what makes democracy thrive.
And, related to that, I always think that being curious is a survival skill in the world, because if you become, and you used the phrase lifelong learner earlier, I think being curious about the world we live in, being curious about other people, makes life interesting. And if you're curious enough about, and you follow what interests you about life, you'll find something that you feel passionate about to explore. And loving to learn means your life will feel purposive. And I do often feel as though some of the fray that we get into has to do with people not feeling a sufficient sense of clarity about the purpose. But that's a hobby horse of mine. I want to, talk a little bit with you, Kyra, then about some of the things that you are working on in Massachusetts with media literacy now. So tell us about what you're doing in Massachusetts.
Sure. So Media Literacy Now is an advocacy organization that informs and drives local, state, and national policy change so that K through 12 students are taught media literacy across the nation. So hopefully we get some of that curriculum from the Media Education Lab right into schools.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. And we have a great PSA that essentially talks about the basics of that. The idea that you're not giving car keys to children some kind of driving lesson. So why are we giving kids screens without any kind of media literacy instruction? Because media literacy equips people with, as you said, those critical thinking skills that allows you to assess and analyze and evaluate the messages that are coming from all kinds of media. So that's kind of our little space in this media literacy education world. And in Massachusetts, we were really fortunate to get a contract with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with the Media Education Lab as our partner. And we're producing a landscape scan of media literacy education in Massachusetts schools. So we're right in the middle of doing that. And once we finish that, we hope that we'll do recommendations for DESE on how they can improve media literacy education through state education policy.
Oh, excellent.
So that's kind of the final wrap up of that we're hoping.
So
and our hope is, oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, so the policies will be informed then by the landscape survey that you've conducted. So it will really be able to highlight, to really focus in based on the information that you've gotten from the field.
Exactly. And there's a whole process that we're doing. We're interviewing experts in media literacy. We're making sure we're doing interviews of teachers and administrators and people in the field so that we know what's happening in Massachusetts. And the hope is this will be a model that other states can use to evaluate media literacy across the nation. And if there's any Massachusetts teachers or administrators on listening to this, we have a survey as part of this landscape scan that's going out, and it's hopefully going to help people understand what's happening in media literacy in schools, and will provide us with their knowledge as well as kind of the bright spots and areas for improvement. So I think that'll be up on your website or on YouTube, and then it's also on MediaLiteracyNow.org's website. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, Kyra, it will be posted in the description that will go under the YouTube version of this interview. People can find it there, and the survey is open until December 20th. So hop aboard. and I do recommend people look at the public service announcement that you were describing that's on your website, because I found it very impactful. I just want to describe it a little, if I may, because you see, in addition to the voiceover narrative about, you wouldn't have your kid drive a car without learning how to drive a car. car. Do you want to give them screens without teaching them something? And then it shows a little girl inside what looks like a van, and she pushes the start button and it says, "Oh, I started the car." And then she starts backing up and says, "What do I do now?" And it's funny, but it's terrifying.
It is.
And it makes the point.
It does. And I think that as a parent myself, I think that you need that kind of messaging, that there has to be that kind of alarm that we are putting our kids out there in the middle of this and not providing that critical thinking skills of media literacy.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to hear some impact stories from either or both of you. What do you hear back then from students, teachers, or community members in response to the programs that you've offered that they've been through?
I want to tell you the story of Massachusetts high school social studies teacher named Ben Alden. Ben Alden works at a vocational technical school in Franklin, Massachusetts, and he teaches civics and government. And his school librarian, Ariel Dagan, came to him and said, "Wow, there's this really interesting curriculum called Courageous Rhode Island. This could be good for your government students, your 12th grade government students." The two of them look it over. They go, "Wow, these are, very easy to implement in the structure of our 40-minute class period." And these topics: social media influencers, targets of propaganda, high conflict, preventing violent extremism, falling down the rabbit hole. These issues are all about kids and their susceptibility to conspiracy theories. And other sort of potentially damaging disinformation and propaganda. And so they implemented it, and they did it this way. Every Thursday or Friday for 9 weeks, Ben led his social studies students through the curriculum, and they carefully documented student growth, because every week students had to write a little reflection. And of course, it's like a muscle when you exercise it, right?
Get stronger.
The first repetition is hard, but then it gets easier, and then it easier. Pretty soon, even after the program is over, Mary, kids are still using the critical questions for everything. He's like, "I can't shut them up now." Now they know how to ask questions about media information, and now they've applied the skills they learned in this 9-week unit.
That's great.
To the rest of the things they're doing.
That must make you feel really good.
Absolutely.
I mean, 'cause that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And they're starting it back up now. This is for the second year now he's going to do it. And I'm very excited because I'm going to get to go in and observe.
Oh, how great. How cool is that?
That'll be like totally joyful for me to see him in action with his students.
Wonderful. That's a great story. It doesn't get more impactful than that. Because that's a strength those kids will carry with them for the rest of their lives. That's really wonderful. Well, I'm curious to find out what are some of your greatest concerns or worries, and what currently gives you hope? Besides the story you just told us, which gives me hope. So what currently do you go, that's really concerning to me, and what makes you feel like, yeah, I feel hopeful?
Kyra, what worries you and what gives you hope?
Well, I think what worries me is that although we've made significant progress, that we're not keeping pace, that this isn't in the classroom already, that, the challenges kids face as more and more media comes on is more difficult. And there's always an opportunity for growth, right? So there's room to make legislative change. There's room for grassroots advocacy. But I think it's not in the classroom yet. So I think that worries me.
Yeah.
But I do see hope. I think there is hope. We have 21 states that have taken legislative activity to elevate K-12 media literacy education.
That's great.
So that is huge, so that people understand that this is important. Most recently, California, Georgia, Indiana.
Oh.
So, I mean, there is hope out there. And I think more and more people are seeing how important this is,
Yeah.
that it is a, that it is a set of critical thinking skills that applies across subject
Yeah.
areas. It's
Yeah.
not just one set of things, that it really fits right in, just like that history teacher found that courageous Rhode Island fit right in.
Yeah.
And so that's what I see.
Yeah, my greatest fear and my greatest hope right now at this moment in time is around a movement that's spreading all over the country, and it's here in Rhode Island and it's here in Massachusetts. It's the cell phone bans in school movement. I think it is in Newburyport. I'm not sure.
To an extent, yeah, it's a current kind of debate that's happening.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
certain, and it's age dependent too, because there are different policies that impact elementary schools, and that's appropriate, I think, and high school students. Most of the policies limit access during certain parts of the day. But I think there are people feeling like there should be stricter rules, and people who feel like, no, we were happy with the policies that we currently have.
Yeah. Yeah, my greatest fear and my greatest hope about the cell phone bans in school, of course, isn't it interesting that we always ask schools to solve all the social problems of the universe, right?
Teachers
Most
are,
of our media,
yeah.
most
Teachers
of our
are
media
expected to be
consumption happens
everything.
at home.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah.
But here we're calling on the schools
Yeah.
for a cell phone ban, even though
Right.
most of the time we're using our devices, we're at home, right?
Right.
But I feel like there's the opportunity or the fear. Let's start with the fear, so I end with the opportunity. The fear is that if I'm going to live with this device, how do I learn how to use it for information?
Yeah.
And how do I use it for learning?
Yeah.
If I ever get to do that in school. So I worry about, can we prepare a generation of people to be responsible creators and consumers of media if these devices are prohibited?
Interesting,
That's what
yeah.
I'm afraid about.
Yeah.
On the plus side, the fact that there is a sense of urgency about the role of these devices, these digital devices in our learning, that's a good thing. And so I think more conversation is needed. I like the idea that through a robust process of experimentation,
Yeah.
different districts will adopt different policies. In 3 or 5 years, we'll know
Yeah.
what worked for media literacy. And we don't know right now.
Yeah.
So just have to encourage that robust experimentation by school leaders to find a way to balance our fears
Yeah.
about these devices
Yeah.
with their real potential as learning tools.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those fears focus on, understandably, on the mental health issues that intersect with the educational issues. And it's going to be interesting, too, to see what happens in Australia. Because, of course, it hasn't happened yet, but I think starting sometime next year, maybe not till 2026, they're going to ban cell phones for people under the age of 16. And I don't know if that is just in the schools. I just haven't read enough about it. But it's going to be interesting to follow and track the data there and see what happens culturally and socially. So there's a lot of ongoing research to be had, and it's really important. And the work you're doing is just enormously helpful, clearly, in finding answers that fit with the research and the data and what we know and with what our values are, what kind of people we want to be, what kind of democratic institutions we want to have. So thank you for all you do. How can people learn more about and support the work of Media Education Lab and Media Literacy Now? Either way, you have a great website, so we'll mediaeducationlab.com.
Yeah, visit the
.org,
website.
sorry. Yeah.
www.mediaeducationlab.com. And Kyra, what's your
Yeah, but
website.
MediaLiteracyNow.org. And there's really interesting tools for people up there that they can take action, individuals, that they can find resources. We have some great resources from our health resource library that match the new standards for health in Massachusetts that include media literacy, which is something we had worked on. So it's, looking at those mental health issues, there's resources there that you can use right in the classroom or even as a parent. So MediaLiteracyNow.org.
And Media Education Lab also has a lot of resources. There's a lot of tabs you can click on, and lots of research, lots of articles, and lots of information about the programs that you've been describing, Renee. So thank you both so much for taking time to be on the morning show. I really appreciate not just your time, but I really appreciate your devotion to these really impactful issues, to creating illumination where there can be confusion. So thank you both. I really appreciate the work you do, and I really appreciate your taking time to visit the show.
Thanks for having us. We really enjoyed it.
It's been my pleasure. That's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Until then, everybody, please be well. Bye-bye now.